Okay, let's dive in. Getting along with people, getting them, well, on board with ideas, influencing them effectively, it's a pretty big challenge we all deal with, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Day to day, whether you're, leading a team or just trying to agree on what movie to watch, how you talk to people really matters.
Right. And often our first instinct is just tell people what to do. Command and control, sort of.
Yeah, the direct route.
Yep.
But the source material we're digging into today, this chapter specifically, it points towards something, well, maybe more powerful.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, right? To pull out those really practical, actionable bits from the text on how you can get cooperation, get better results, without actually giving a direct order.
Exactly. And it kicks off with a great little story from Ida Tarbell. She's often called the Dean of American Biographers.
Oh, right, Tarbell.
Yeah, she was researching O&D Young, a big figure at the time. And she talked to this guy who'd worked super closely with Young, like day in, day out for 3 years straight.
3 years. Okay, so what did he notice? What was the standout thing about Young's style?
Well, this colleague swore, absolutely swore, that in all that time, he never heard O&D Young give a direct order. Not once.
Never. That's kind of hard to believe for someone in charge.
It is, isn't it? But his whole approach was apparently built around suggestions, requests, and maybe the key thing, asking questions.
Okay, so paint a picture. What did that actually sound like in practice?
The source gives examples, yeah.
It does. So instead of the usual do this or don't do that, it was always softer, more inviting. Like,
Yeah.
you might consider this, or maybe, do you think that approach would work?
Huh, subtle.
Very. Or, say, he'd dictate a letter. Instead of just handing it off, he'd turn to his assistant and ask, what do you think of this?
Ah, okay. Getting their input.
Right. Or if he was looking at a draft someone else wrote, he wouldn't say, fix this. He'd maybe suggest, perhaps if we phrased it this way, it might land a bit better.
Wow. Okay, that's a definite shift. And the source digs into why this works so well. What was the impact? Yeah, it really comes down to, well, respect and empowerment. Asking questions gave people room to think for themselves, to learn.
And it saved face, too, I bet.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it. It saved their pride. Being asked feels totally different than being told. It makes people feel, well, important. Like their view actually matters.
Right. You shift from just being an executor of tasks to feeling like you're actually contributing, participating.
Precisely. And that feeling, it naturally encourages cooperation. It avoids triggering that almost automatic resistance you sometimes get with a direct command, that little spark of rebellion.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Okay, so that's the positive example. But the source gives a contrast, right, to really hammer the point home.
Oh, yeah. A stark contrast. This one's from a vocational school in Wyoming, Pennsylvania. An instructor there, Dan Santarelli, shared the story. It involved a student's car.
Let me guess. Parked somewhere it shouldn't be.
Bingo. Blocking a driveway for one of the workshops. Another instructor found it. And his reaction was, well, let's just say not very O&D Young-like.
Uh-oh. How bad was it?
Pretty bad. The source says he basically stormed into the classroom, really aggressive, arrogant tone,
Oh, dear.
and just starts yelling, right? Whose car is blocking the driveway? Then, when the student owned up, the instructor apparently screamed, move that car and move it right now or I'll wrap a chain around it and drag it out of there.
Yikes. Okay. So the student was definitely wrong to park there. We get that.
Okay.
But the approach, what happened next? What was the fallout from that command and threat tactic?
Totally predictable, really. Negative. The source points out that the student, and actually his classmates too, just felt this intense resentment towards that instructor from then on.
And I can imagine.
They started, actively looking for ways to make his job harder. Just unpleasant.
Yeah.
So yeah, the car got moved eventually, but the relationship, damaged. Long-term damage.
It just creates such a toxic atmosphere, doesn't it? So how could that instructor have handled it using the principles we saw with Young? What does the source suggest as the alternative?
It's pretty simple, really. Just a shift in tone and phrasing. Walk in calmly, maybe ask in just a friendly way, hey, whose car is that in the driveway?
Okay. Less confrontational.
Right. And then, instead of a threat, just explain the reason why it needs moving. Not about him, but about the situation. Like, if it were moved, it'd really help everyone get cars in and out of the shop. Something like that.
And the predicted outcome of that approach.
The source figures the student would probably have just moved it gladly, maybe even apologized, No big drama, no hard feelings, no resentment brewing. It's about explaining the why and inviting them to fix it, not just barking orders.
It really shines a light on something key the source mentions, doesn't it? Asking questions isn't just about making an order sound nicer. It actually gets the other person thinking, engages their brain.
Yes, it stimulates their creativity. And this taps into something really fundamental about us. People are just much more likely to buy into a decision, to accept a direction, if they feel they had some hand in it.
Even if that hand was just answering a question that led to the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of ownership. They're part of the solution, not just the recipient of an order.
Okay, makes sense. Let's look at the third example. This one sounds like it puts the principal under some real pressure. Ian McDonald in South Africa.
Yeah, Johannesburg. He was the GM of a small manufacturing plant doing precision machine parts. High-stakes stuff.
And he faced a big problem.
Huge opportunity, actually, but with a massive challenge attached. A potential customer offered a very large order, like game-changing large. The catch, the delivery timeline was incredibly tight.
Looked impossible with their current workload, I'm guessing.
Pretty much. It seemed like there was no way they could realistically deliver on time.
So what did McDonald do? Did he just crack the whip? Tell everyone, okay, mandatory overtime, got to make this happen?
Nope. He went the other way. Instead of just pushing from his office, he called everyone together, the whole team.
Okay, face to face.
Yeah. And he was just upfront, totally transparent, laid out the whole situation, the challenge, but also what this big order could mean for the company, for their jobs, the whole picture.
And then he brought in the questions.
Exactly. He didn't say, here's how we'll do it. He asked them. Things like, look, is there anything we can do together to possibly handle this order?
Okay, framing it as a shared problem.
Right. And then more specific prompts. Can anyone think of different ways to process it through the shop? Any ideas that might make it possible? And is there any way to adjust our hours or maybe shuffle assignments that could help us pull this off?
So genuinely asking for their ideas and solutions. What was the team's reaction? Did they just stare blankly?
Quite the opposite. The source says it was kind of amazing. Instead of feeling stressed or pushed, they got energized. They actually started brainstorming right there, coming up with ideas he hadn't thought of. Yeah. And it went beyond just ideas. They apparently insisted he take the order. They basically adopted this, yeah, we can totally do this attitude, real collective buy-in.
And the result? Did they manage it?
They nailed it. Accepted the order, the team rallied, produced everything, and delivered on time. It's just such a clear demonstration of this whole idea, in action, under pressure.
It really brings it all together. So the principle the source pulls from all these stories is?
Explicitly stated as Principle 4, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Simple, but profound.
So let's connect this back to you listening right now. This isn't just for CEOs like Owen Young or plant managers like Ian McDonald, is it?
Not at all. This applies anytime you need someone's cooperation. Anytime you're trying to influence an outcome, really. Leading your team, sure, but also working with colleagues you don't manage, maybe even negotiating chores at home.
Right. Shifting from telling to asking can just fundamentally change that interaction.
Yeah. It really can. It signals respect. It invites collaboration. It accesses the other person's knowledge and, frankly, their willingness to help. And as we've seen, that usually leads to way better results and better relationships than just laying down the law.
It's building that sense of partnership, not just managing tasks or directing traffic.
Exactly. It's the difference between do this and what do you think about doing this, or how could we tackle this? Huge difference.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with from this deep dive. Think about the echoes of how you communicate. It's not just about getting that one thing done right now.
Good point.
Consider how framing your requests, maybe using more questions, more suggestions instead of commands, how might that affect not just the task at hand, but the whole long-term picture? The relationship, the other person's morale, their willingness to jump in and help you out next time a challenge comes up.
Yeah, that long-term cooperation versus just short-term compliance. Definitely something worth mulling over as you go about your day.